Shalom, bro.
Shalom, my brother. Shalom, everybody.
Pastor Yoshi Yahu Ben Moshe Dasaredo. Long name.
That's me. It's a long name.
You're gonna have to have like a double license,
I think if I get two
if
more
it's a,
surnames, I'm gonna be able to be eligible to be like an emperor or something.
that's very true. Very
Because I already
true.
got the big name.
Very true.
How
Well,
you doing, my brother?
chilling. I'm pretty excited. This is episode 30.
30.
We are
Nice.
now in the 30s.
We're
Starting the
finally.
30s.
I mean, I know we already were official before,
Yeah.
but I think now we have some more validity just for the sheer amount of episodes that we put out.
Well, just the consistency, right?
Yeah, we had a few like here and there's, but
That's
we're here.
life, you know. What can you do? But
Indeed.
yeah, episode 30. And we're at 60 subscribers. Not too bad.
Yes, we've gained 60 subscribers in what? 4 months, 5 months,
Yeah.
or
And
less.
that's not really, on my part, but like, we haven't even done like clips and stuff like that. We haven't really done a whole lot to
Yeah,
push, our
I
content.
mean, I tried it a lot, but I was not creative enough to make clips. I mean, I
Yeah.
tried, but it got to a point that I didn't have enough creativity to try to make something that was going to be fruitful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, the point of the matter is we're still here, 30 episodes down, and it's exciting. And yeah. So one thing we were talking about it before, like I feel like this is like every episode we're like, oh, what should we talk about? What should we pontificate on?
Right.
What should we play with in a kosher way, of course. And you brought up loneliness,
Right.
like that Akon song. I'm
I've
so
heard a lot.
lonely.
Oh yeah, that was very famous here in Brazil in the 2000s.
Really? He was all over the place in the 2000s.
So
Yeah, so you brought it up, and I had a couple ideas I was kind of stirring in my noggin, my cranium,
right.
and but I feel like I think they're good ideas on like an episode, but I need to like flush some things out in terms of like how to make it happen.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, it's a good, because I think everybody, in one way, shape, or form, like faces loneliness and isolation, and I think those two things are very similar, but they're not exactly the same.
Right.
Because loneliness has like this negative connotation, right? And it's kind of like a depressive trait, loneliness. Like everybody says, there's a loneliness epidemic in the world nowadays.
Right. And it is normally related to. It always carries like a bad name to it.
Right. No one wants to feel loneliness, and no one wants to feel isolation in a sense. But I think when it comes to isolation, I think at times a type of isolation is necessary.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Not like self-inflicting punishment isolation, like, oh, I did something bad, so I'm gonna go hide in the corner. Like, maybe Adam and Eve did. They hid themselves. So there wasn't loneliness, but there was isolation, try to isolate themselves from Yahuah. But, there comes times where you gotta isolate yourself from the world.
Right.
To varying degrees. Maybe Yahuah was trying to show you something, trying to teach you something, and you need to go and do prayer and fast, and like push the world away, get off the social media, get off the video games and the YouTube and the movies, right, and just like focus on what Yahuah was trying to show you.
I believe that we have, as you said, like we have the bad connotation one, which would be like, as we spoke about in a few episodes, for instance, those people that like, there's a difference between liking the countryside and wanting to be like away from the cities because of whatever reason, and just like, no, I need to get out of the city because they are after me or something like that.
Yeah.
Some people isolate for fear. Some people isolate for, I don't know, anxiety or something like that. And that's definitely a no-go. But I also could understand, and I think I do understand, the necessity for alone time.
Right.
So I believe there's a difference, and I've been lonely,
Right.
truthfully lonely, especially in the depression years, and I've been isolated for choice and for situation. And
Right.
I
Right.
think that the difference lies in the objective and if
Right.
it is something forced into you or
Right.
onto you, should I say.
For sure. And I think I think that's the key, like self-inflicted isolation in the sense of it's like what is the reasoning behind it, right? Like Yahusha isolated himself 40
Right.
days and 40 nights in the wilderness fasting,
For purpose.
and it had a purpose. And like the example I gave before, is maybe he was trying to show you something. He's trying to correct you in some way, and you need, especially now in 2026,
Right.
technology is everywhere. Even when you're alone, you're not really alone. You got social media, Discord. You got like the chat roulette. Well, I think chat roulette got banned, but
I don't even know what you're talking about.
it's like a website you go on, and it's a webcam, and you just like it's like a chat room, and you just like randomly
Oh,
it just
I,
shuffles you.
there was a different name for this in Brazil. I don't remember it, but Omigo.
Oh
Omigo.
man, yeah, we got that here too. So you got like those kinds of weird things. But the point being, like, there's I feel like especially nowadays, there's such a um maybe back in the day you had a problem with like bringing things to your attention because there's 2,000 years ago there's not a lot of distractions. It's like I'm sleeping in this tent, and I have like 8 kids, and there's no like grocery store to go get some meat at. You gotta, like, I don't know, be a shepherd,
Yeah.
or you gotta go hunt. You gotta go do something so you can feed yourself, and like that's where all your attention is going to, survival. But now we live in a time where it's like, everything's at your fingertips. Like,
Right.
you place an order, it's there in 2 days. In some places it's like there the same day.
Right.
You drive down the street, you have like a variety of options to eat from, and you're
Yes.
just kind of like, stun locked with so many things.
That
And
it is really impossible to isolate. Because as you said, like
yeah.
not only do we have technology everywhere, but like it's very difficult for you just to go to the woods and just be isolated for a little bit to
Oh
clear your
yeah.
head or to look at the stars. Because first we have light pollution, second I have sound pollution, and third
Yeah.
of all, everything is very connected. I'm not going to say too connected, but very connected. Because
Right.
for certain people, for instance, I discovered by trying that the countryside, the isolated, completely isolated countryside lifestyle is not for me. But
Yeah.
I went into that thinking that it was for me. Like, oh, I want to go because I love documentaries. So sometimes I would watch a documentary on somebody living in Siberia or whatever in Alaska, and I was like, oh, that sounds and it seems beautiful and nice and airy and fresh all the time, and you actually have to get concerned about the seasons because there isn't there aren't many situations, or there aren't as many situations of synthetic things
Yeah.
because of tarmac, or because of what I'm trying to say. I think
Yeah.
everybody should try to connect themselves with nature as much as possible within proportion. And I thought I would adapt fast because of the way I thought, but it ended up not being for me. So I understand the taste or the want or the desire or the will to go and spend some time, outdoors or away from, whatever situations and stuff. But I start getting concerned when it blows up out of proportion. Like I've been isolated in an island for 30 years alone, just me and
Yeah.
my dog and stuff like that.
Well, it's like well, yeah, like you said, speaking to like kind of living that more rural life. Like I said, the seasons matter. Like all those things, like there's no time for distraction because everything matters. It's like if you live in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, and it's like fall, it's like, dude, you're chopping wood day and night because winter's coming in a few weeks,
Right.
and you gotta have enough wood for the fire because if not, you're gonna freeze to death. You're gonna turn into a popsicle.
Right.
Um, and I think I lost my train of thought. What were you saying? You said something about isolation, right? So then you have the extreme, which is like, oh, the government's watching me. You know, there you got like that paranoid schizo vibe going to you, and then it's like I need to put myself on this mountaintop, like hours away from civilization, never interact with anybody, and that's not. I don't want to say it's not healthy because there's probably like some people out there who they just need to live like that.
Yeah, I know a guy. You know him too.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I'm not. I don't want to. You can't do like a blanket statement. Like maybe there is someone who has one or another calling like that, and there's a purpose to it. But I think for a lot of people, if you go with the perspective like I got to escape society and escape the world, and even though it may be like it may seem to have good intentions, because it's like, yeah, you don't want to, especially if you're a believer, right? And you have the
Right.
understanding that like a lot of the things in the world are um, not beneficial, and they can be counterproductive to your walk. You're like, I want to leave all this behind and just go live on a mountaintop. But then it makes a lot of other aspects of your walk difficult. Like if you're always on a mountaintop, you've probably heard this numerous times. Um, but it's like if you're just isolating yourself on a mountaintop away from people, it's like, how are you going to share the gospel?
Right.
How are you going to go and be a fisher of men if the only thing you have around you is literal fish?
You can hinder your calling pretty
Right,
seriously.
right. You're called to be a pastor. What are you going to pastor? Like
Yeah.
just literal sheep? Like no. Like you have. We all have a role in evangelism, even if we're not holding the office of evangelist. And it's like, how can you be part of a ministry if you're by yourself on a mountaintop? How can you aid Yahuwah's work,
Right.
which is the Kehillah, which is the congregation, if you're not a
And
part of one?
not to to blow smoke on like a virtual congregation, because we met through a virtual
Right,
congregation,
right,
but it gets to a point that you need to graduate to something more solid, so to speak.
right.
And like, of course, you can live like in the Blue Mountains or in in Georgia, I think, or you can go to the the border between Canada and United States and live on those big properties in a mountaintop and join online meetings and stuff. But it gets to a point that you may lose opportunities because you are so away from everybody. You are so far from people, from society, and it might be good for your mental health. But I don't think this should be like a. And I'm just pontificating. I'm a 20-year-old man. I don't know life like that all that well. I don't think it's healthy for you to spend your whole life away from everybody all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, especially if you have the intention of like this disdain for society or people, like that's definitely when it's gone too far. But there's also like a balance, right? It's like, yeah, sometimes you do need to get away and like unplug from the matrix
Right.
and get off of technology for a bit and be with yourself and your thoughts, or like the real things of life, like your family, and like if you have children or people, like you just need to just like be a human in a more primal sense.
I
um
think a lot of people tried, uh, creating the dissonance um, between like what I'm trying to say is that like a lot of people have this fantasy that we need to go back to the natural roots where it was just a man and his dire wolf in the middle of nowhere trying living in a
yeah,
tent and stuff. But they forgot that people started going to cities for a reason.
right,
Because like people, mankind, Adama, we need each other. We need the sense of community and the sense of purpose. And yes, when you are in the middle of nowhere, you need to hunt for your food, you need to fish, you need to, haul water up and down the mountain, and or even in the plains or in the meadows and stuff like that. You have a purpose of survival.
right.
But like, so you're just living this life for survival's sake. You're not trying to reach people with the gospel if you know the gospel. And I think people that are watching us do know the gospel or have heard in a way or another. We're not expecting everybody of you to be Israelites or stuff like that. Maybe you are now, but in the future, who knows? Who else can we reach? But my point is that we have this tendency, especially our generation, because the previous generation was all about hustle. You need to make $1 million by 22, or else you're a
Yeah,
failure. So we've become ultra processed, ultra, um, city-esque, so to speak.
Yeah.
And now our generation is trying to go the other extreme. No, we need to leave the city because the city is all evil and there is nothing good in it.
Yeah.
And we need to find, my opinion is that we need to find the balance in all this. Because if we
Yeah.
don't have balance, there is no order, there is no decency to the thought process. And how does that tie into isolation? Sometimes, and I say this by my little experience that I had in the mountains, and the goal was not to isolate, was just to try and live in a rural society if we could, or just try to have a more natural life type of thing. And it was cheaper as well. But how does it tie into isolation? A lot of people pursue the isolation utopia,
Right.
but they forget about the gospel aspect of it. And as you said, not everybody holds the office of evangelist, but everybody should try and evangelize in a way or another. For instance, this podcast of ours, my Monday night class and stuff like that, we are trying to reach people with the word of Yahuah, because according to the scriptures, and that this statement doesn't resound with people that are not believers. But if you know the Bible and you know the objective of it, that is to share the gospel. As Nehemiah said, like, who are you supposed to share the gospel with if you're isolated, like the acorns and the grapefruit and stuff?
Yeah, like Ice Age, that little squirrel.
You need to have some type of connection with people.
Yeah.
Also, because like I'm going to use the example of the body of Messiah. We are in the body of Messiah, so we are parts of one unit. And the cells, they need to work together for something to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
we need each other for a lot of aspects and for a lot of reasons. And I know, like, I have a congregation here locally. I have this privilege. You too, there where you are, and
Yeah.
like the difference that it makes when you are interacting with people. And like, neither of us have children now, but imagine like the difference between bringing up a child in the congregation presence with other people, with other like-minded children, maybe, which is the case in Remnant House, if I'm not mistaken. They have a lot of children there, versus like you, your wife, and your two boys in the middle of the Amazon jungle.
Right.
You're not gonna have, if you're talking gospel, it's very hard to have like the same results or any results at all, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Well, I think too, and I think there's a couple things actually now that we start talking about it that I kind of want to touch on. But I think for now, I want to specifically talk about like the whole loneliness and isolation. I think isolation is good in moderation, and I think that summarizes kind of what we've been yapping about the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But then there's loneliness, which is like, I feel like loneliness is something you can only feel. So loneliness is like you're still in a room full of people and you still have that feeling.
Man, I felt that for a long
You know what I
time.
mean? And then there's isolation, which is the only way you feel that is by, and I guess definitions matter. Like, for the sake of this conversation, isolation is a voluntary desire to separate yourself from people for some particular purpose. And it can't be negative, but for intents of this conversation, it's a positive thing, right? In the
Right.
aspect of maybe you're struggling with a problem in your life and you need to you need to silence everything so you can isolate the voice of Yahuah. And then there's loneliness, which is that negative feeling you have where, like I said, like you can be in a room full of people and still feel alone.
Right.
And that could be because of lack of connection. Like, you can be like, if you're around 100 people, but you have nothing in common with 100 people, there's nothing to talk about with 100 people because there's no values or or opinions or
There is
you
no
know eh,
relatability.
yeah, there's nothing to relate to, and there's nothing to really discuss that's not like fake. Because like, at least me, right? Like, look, I'm introverted to the highest degree. I do not like to go anywhere. I was actually talking to my wife about this today. We were talking about it when I got home, and it's because she would say like she's introverted, and like I would just let her say that because it's like, dude, I know you're not introverted. I know what introverted is, and it's like, she's way more outgoing than me, way more
Yeah.
social,
She
and
sounds like it.
yeah, and I'm more like, I only really talk when I have to talk to somebody, and it's nothing against anybody. It's just like, that's my personality. Like,
Yeah.
I just I don't know if it's good or bad. I think in a lot of ways it's good, and maybe in some ways it's bad. But the moral of the story is like I can be in a room full of people and kind of be isolated and be okay with it and not feel lonely. But somebody can be in a room full of people and like they want to interact, they want to kind of relate, and they have that loneliness. And I'm trying to think, like, I really don't think I've struggled with loneliness really at times. I have struggled with the negative aspects of isolation, like on purpose, isolating myself from others because, I don't, maybe I did something I wasn't supposed to do and I don't feel worthy of like being around people.
Right.
Especially like when it comes to the Kehillah, the community, where it's like, I should know better. Like, so I'm going to punish myself and just not, which is counterproductive because you should seek counsel of the, especially if you're struggling with something like, hey, you should seek counsel. You should seek correction. You should seek encouragement. But yeah, I don't think I've struggled with loneliness too much in terms of like a negative effect. I think I've always been very blessed to have people around me who, I think, even if they're not necessarily saved, they're good people and they're trying. I think, like a lot of people, like I'm friends with a few people who are not saved, but I know, like in the long run, like they still have the desire to be the best they can be, and naturally, yeah, willing, that'll take them to a place where they receive Yahusha, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I've never struggled with loneliness in the short form of before I start getting into some weird tangent trying to explain something. I've never really struggled with it, but I know, like you kind of alluded to it just a bit ago, that you have.
Right.
So I think maybe for a lot of people, you can maybe share on some of that, because I'm assuming you don't really feel that, or you don't struggle with that today.
Right. Like
And
there are levels to this. So just to make a comment before I enter into this, and not to go on a tangent, but like I understand is a little hard for me to understand, but I do understand when a person says like, no, I need to get out, I need to isolate myself and silence everything so I can resolve something. I have a difficult time to understand after I've began being a part after I begun being a part of a congregation. I truly understand that the congregation is part of the healing in
right,
whatever aspect it is. And to me, and this is what I counsel one of the people here in the congregation in Campina. She was struggling with a few things and stuff, and I told, and she was asking like, may I like just be away from a few from the services for a few days and stuff. And being a person that was healed from depression, and that kind of resonates a lot to me with me, because normally when you are dealing with things, and I know I don't speak for everybody, I'm just speaking like the way I see things according to my life experience.
mm-hmm.
People tend to think that being alone, it somehow is easier to solve problems that we are ashamed to talk about, or we are just like embarrassed to talk about, or they sound very too personal and stuff like that. And I tend to disagree with that, because the congregation, one of the reasons you are there is to overcome. Meaning, like, you're going through whatever shenanigans you're going through, I'm going through whatever shenanigans I'm going through and stuff. But we gather together regardless of that. That's one of the things that I understood once I've joined the congregation. And this is my point of view. I'm not even saying I'm right, but this is what I've seen. That once you put this type of thing to the side, like, okay, I understand I need some type of silence, but the congregation is supposed to be part of my help. Like, my brothers and sisters are there to hear me cry, to hear me laugh, and I'm there to do the same for them. And also, to me, and this is what I tried to do myself in my life and counsel people that come asking me for this type of direction, is that when you are going through something, why is the first thing that we need to drop is the fellowship? That sounds very programmed. And I know you
Right,
are an
right,
introvert, maybe you have a different type of, but like, we don't neglect going to work, we don't neglect going to whatever, but we always try to neglect the congregation first. And
right.
that to me doesn't sound right, because technically we are supposed to overcome, and not alone. We are supposed to overcome together. And then if it is like a problem, let's say I am going through, I don't know, depression. How better do you expect to be in your room alone in the dark
Right, right.
versus being in the congregation? And I know that's not the only reason, but again, this is just, before I comment on what you pointed out. um, I think that it's hard for me to understand. I'm not questioning or condemning. It's just hard for me to understand how being alone can be better than being in the middle of a group of people that are trying to be there to help you and to be helped by you and stuff like that. So, what was the topic you brought up before I entered this tangent? Because I didn't want to forget, but I did forgot.
No, just essentially because we're talking about loneliness or isolation and whatnot, and
Right.
I was essentially saying like I can't think of a time where I struggled with loneliness. I mean,
Oh,
there's times where you feel lonely, but you
right.
kind of alluded that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, I think it'd be beneficial you share upon that.
So, I started going through depression when I was 10 years old. And I remember, and I was in the fourth grade here in Brazil, quarta série back then. They don't even call it like that anymore, so I feel old every time I talk about this. But I remember in the school that I used to study at, there was this big ramp, the ramp that you would go up with your car and park, and there was like a grass cliff beside that ramp, and you could sit down at the edge of it and be looking down at the cars and stuff. So I sat down. I remember that day. I sat down. I had been rejected by this little girl, and I know it starts corny, but like the thought that I had was not just sadness. Like I wanted to end. I was like, man, like in my family, people were fighting all the time, and
Yeah, yeah.
nobody was good with anybody, and I didn't have any friends. And every time that I tried having a conversation with somebody, I would be belittled or cursed out for some reason. And I don't know how to explain this for the English speaking people, but I am from the state of Rio Grande do Sul, which is the southernmost state of the country, and I was brought up in the state of Santa Catarina, which is the second southernmost point in Santa Catarina in Brazil. And for some reason, the inhabitants of both states hate each other. I don't know why, but like, and because I was from the southernmost point, I was constantly belittled and bullied and beat to almost passing out for some reason. And I was chubby, I was obese and stuff like that. So you can imagine that I was suffering United Stadium type of bullying in a country that's not normal. So that depression started coming in that sense. And as I said, I didn't have many friends. It was hard for me to interact with people because, as I was always an introvert. Like I just loved my space, being on my own, on my own little room, my own little corner of the world. And I still enjoy doing this. Now I do it with my wife, but like I would rather spend all my days with my wife, and that was about it. But I understood that my life doesn't work like that, and I don't think it works for a lot of people. So fast forward to my adult days, I think it was 2018 or something like that. I went the whole year thinking how I could kill myself. From January 1st, where everybody was going to parties and everybody was, doing this, that, and the other, and I was in my room like losing every single match that I tried to play in the games that I used to play. So I was feeling like I was a failure. And in this case, and in the case of a person like me, um, if you are depressed or something like that, normally isolation is already in there, but
Right,
you are
right.
not isolating because you want to. It's just because it feels more comfortable just to suffer in silence and alone, away from everybody, because you don't want to worry nobody. You don't want anybody to think you are weak because you are like, um, oh, he's sad all the time. He is weak. Ha ha ha. Look at him and stuff like that. You are already being rejected all the time as things stand. So you don't want to give another reason for people to be rejected. But that's quite the opposite of healing. For you to bring healing, you need to expose yourself to healing. And sometimes, and all the time, in every situation, that takes exposure. You need to ask for help. You need to go after help. think with me, if you are having problems in your deep dark room, how are you supposed to find solution in the same environment? That doesn't happen normally, and even the world knows that with the psychological and psychiatric treatment and stuff like that.
Right.
So I've suffered it with deep isolation. Like I would be in the room full of people and I would feel like everybody there hated me. And I'm not saying that wasn't the case, but like this is how I felt. Like I was in the company of people and I felt like, man, I felt like a hole in my chest that I couldn't feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that went for like, I don't know, I think I was I know I was healed. I was saved in 2021. No, 2020. I was healed in 2020 and I was completely out of depression in 2021. Is that to say that I never felt sad anymore? No, that's not the case. Human beings have, ebbs and flows, highs and lows and stuff like that. But that depressive state I fought from when I was 10 with the desire of ending and killing myself regardless the way it would happen to when I was 20, 23. Yeah, 23. So it's like 13 years of like constant loneliness. And at first I wanted to be exposed, I wanted to go out, I wanted to try and connect with people, but everybody kept on rejecting me and shutting the door in my face. So I basically lost the hope. So okay, since nobody wants to talk to me, I'm not going to open that door again for rejection, for the creation of expectation. So loneliness, this is why it's hard for me to understand that you can achieve some type of internal healing on your own. This is why I believe this is one of the reasons why Yahuah is so emphatic when it comes to the congregation, the assembly. The end goal of the whole book is for us to assemble with each other in the body of Messiah.
Right.
And
Unity.
as we saw, like with Korach, with Midian, they messed up. What was the penalty? Isolation. One was like for 7 days, and the
Right.
other was perpetually. So it's hard for me. I have a very hard time understanding, and not to be contesting or trying to defy you what you said before. It's just that I find it very hard to see healing when you remove yourself from the camp. And I'm talking, believing camp in a congregation. I'm not talking like that group of friends that just take you to drink every night and they think that's healing.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
me, that's ludicrous. That's obnoxious to say the least. But in the environment of believing or believe them, if that word if it exists, I think that we find healing in um, fellowship. And in the darkest moments of our lives is when we see how important that is. And I know because I speak of experience, you know what I'm saying? Like isolation to you is not something that bothers you, but today it bothers me. Despite the fact that I am like an introvert and I love my space and stuff, but sometimes when I miss a service, so to speak, for whatever happens, I feel like, man, I could have gone. I should have gone, I guess.
Yeah.
I started feeling that. I think Yahuah has been healing me from that because my isolation type was like infectious, was bad for me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like I think it depends on the individual, right? Like in terms of like if you're struggling with like because loneliness I think is attached to different things, and like the case you describe is like depression.
Yeah.
Others with the fear of rejection, which like I feel like a lot of that kind of it kind of fits together. Usually people who have a problem with rejection get depressed, and because they're depressed, they feel it drives them to loneliness, and because their loneliness, they feel like they're getting rejected, which it's like a loop. You know what I
It's like
mean?
it's a package. Normally, it's a package.
Yeah, it's a package deal, and I think it comes like. So when is isolation a problem? Well, I think there's like you have scripture which states it kind of sets a very general guideline because for one, the scriptures give us appointed times. So we know no matter what, how we feel about this or how lonely we feel, it's like you have to assemble, whether it's for Chodesh, whether it's for a Moed, Passover, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, whether it's Shabbat, there's a degree of assembly required. So those are like the hard stops, where like Yahuah puts a barricade and it's like, no, like at minimum you need to assemble during these times. And then there's like, and then outside of that, the other 6 days of the week, or the other 20 days of the month, depending on what month you land in, if there's a lot of appointed times or not, it's like
Right.
then there's freedom. And it's like, okay, so what is the acceptable amount of isolation? I think then the rule would become, it depends on the individual,
Right.
but it also depends on like where you are in life, because like in your case, right, you're a pastor.
Right.
So even if Yahuwah appoints in a specific month, you're going to assemble at least 4 or 5 Shabbats, 4 or 5 times for Shabbat, a Chodesh, and they're a new month. And then maybe you're in a month where there's a feast. So you know that at least 6, 7 days out of the month you have to assemble. You can't be isolated. You have to be with people. But by nature of you being a pastor, the other 20 days, 22 days, 23 days of the month, you still can't really isolate because you have a responsibility to your sheep.
I need to be constantly. How are you guys? You need
Right.
anything?
Right.
So
This
you
guy
should be
needs
doing that. You know what I'm saying?
right. This guy needs counseling. You need to host a Bible study. You need to host a prayer meeting, whatever, whatever, whatever. So life will force you to not be able to isolate or engage with that loneliness.
And
But
again, that
then,
goes, just to add to what you're saying, that goes to show like that the Yahuwah uses the congregation in a case by
right,
case basis. Because like in my case, if it was my way, it was gonna be me and my wife in the middle of the fjord and Norway.
right, right,
I'm
exactly,
being healed because Yahuwah is exposing me to the healing, basically.
right, exactly. And but then in another situation where you don't have those kinds of responsibilities that force you, then you have the freedom to say, okay, well, what's the right amount of isolation? Or alone, or I guess in this case it would be isolation or being alone. It's like, well, whatever amount isn't being a detriment.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to everybody else's tolerance is different. And like some people have a much higher social battery, and it's like they need to be around people. They want to hang out, they want to do this, they want to have a barbecue, they want to meet with the kahila more often, they want to have a women's meeting, a men's meeting, a retreat. And maybe someone like myself who has a much lower social battery, it's like after one day of like having a 2 minute conversation, I'm like, all right, dude, I'm tired. I need to like go recharge. Because then if I'm socializing too much, then I get grumpy. I'm not having a good time, and then no one else is having a good time, and it's like then
Right.
it's not helping anybody because I'm in a bad mood, and because my bad mood now making others be in a bad mood. Like, why is the Hamid being a scumbag? Like he's so rude. He's being
Right.
very short, and it's like it's not me intentionally trying to be mean. It's just like, dude, I'm socialed out. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I think it's different for everybody, and so the question becomes, then the answer is, it's just like a lot of things. It's an individual basis. It's like, what do you need? And you have to be honest with yourself. If you're someone who struggles with loneliness, if you're someone who, needs that socialization, you need the group more than maybe someone else, then like, yeah, you need to be showing up to make sure you're always going to the women's meetings. I mean, you probably should be going anyways, but the point is maybe you need to reach out to that brother or that sister
Right.
in the congregation and like make the effort to arrange a hangout. Like, hey, can we do a little scripture studies between you and me, and we do it every Tuesday,
And
and
the point is like trying to achieve the healthy balance.
right,
And for some people, the healthy balance may be like too much for somebody else, as you said, like the social battery and stuff. I am a great proponent, and I truly believe in what's known as overcoming. And a lot of people talk about overcoming, but overcoming is hard. Overcoming basically demands you to go above and beyond limitations that you never thought you would have to face in your life.
yeah,
And I bring this up again because like overcoming trauma, overcoming situations sometimes involves getting away from your shell, and sometimes that's a little uncomfortable at first, but you need to expose yourself a little too much so you can afterwards cut back a little bit. But you need the little part, like I don't know, 2 years or something, being closely involved against your will.
right,
But
right,
but as you were saying, like it is a case by case basis. There every situation is different when it comes to that. And the only thing that I will, talking about scripture, because technically this podcast is supposed to be scripturally based. Talking about scripture, I don't have a verse in specific, but the whole point of the book is to congregate. We have appointed times, as Nehemiah said, at least a minimum of 20-something times a year you need to congregate. And that's because the congregation is important in several ways, for several things, like for children, for women, for men. We all need friends. And in the congregation is a little easier because you have like-minded people and things like that. But there are people that like to see each other just once a month, and
Yeah.
that's good for them.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's how it works. And I think, and I think in at different times we've talked about it too, but a lot of the things, and I think it's been, a very specific theme as we've been talking, like the congregation is like, in a sense, the garden, right?
Right.
And like, it's kind of like a really healthy garden or a really healthy farm. It's like, if anybody, like, maybe you've heard of regenerative agriculture,
Yes.
right? And it's like and I think part of what goes in that, I'm not a farmer, you know what I'm saying?
Neither am
I've never grown. I think I grew a lima bean once in like kindergarten. You do a little
That's
science
cool. Yeah,
experiment,
I did
and they
that
make
too.
you grow the little lima bean in the wet paper towel. That's like as far as I've gotten.
In a piece of cotton.
Yeah, yeah. But the healthiest garden is one where there's different types of plants, and they all help each other grow, because this plant releases more nitrogen into the soil while this plant absorbs that nitrogen. It brings things into balance. And a healthy garden has a diverse, not forced diversity, but a natural diversity of people who have come from different walks of life, have faced different challenges, similar challenges. And like you said, like you were saying earlier, like being part of being in a kahila is like you get the benefit of that.
Right.
Because, if you're struggling with loneliness, if you're struggling with, depression, Yahuah may just plant you in a congregation where there's other people who have struggled with that as well. So, and they've overcome that. And now you have this wealth of wisdom and knowledge that you can seek from these people. Like, oh, you went through a similar thing. Like what did you do to get out of it? What did you do to overcome that? What did Yahuah teach you? And Yahuah can use those people and teach you through them. You know what I mean? And for all intents and purposes, you're probably there to serve a purpose as well, because someone else is going to come later on down the line, and you can be that person for that individual.
Right.
So, it's a reason Hebrews 10 says, "Forsake not the assembling of yourselves,"
10:25.
because you need, and we've said it numerous times on the podcast, like, you need assembly, you need the congregation. Whether you are struggling with loneliness, whether you're struggling with some kind of addiction, whether you're struggling with moderation, like, there's a degree of accountability that you get out of the congregation. And what I just laid out 5 seconds ago, the idea that there's going to be people there who have been through something similar, maybe not the exact same thing, but something similar, that they can lend, that they can be of assistance to you and say, look, I was in the same place, this is what I did, and these are some beneficial tools to help you start digging your way up out of the hole that you're already in.
Right.
And anytime that, let me think here, if you struggle with loneliness, and there's probably, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right in this thinking, because like I said, I don't think I've really had a Baruch Hashem Yahuah. I've never had to struggle with that directly.
Praise Yahuah.
Like there's this thing, like there's chronic depression, right? People,
Right.
like there's people who go through, and everybody gets depressed to a degree. But then it's like, okay, do you have a reason to be depressed? Like maybe, your pet dog got ran over by a car, and it's like, now you got to bury the poor thing and dig a hole. You got to like do the whole little funeral service for it. It's like, yeah, that's a very logical conclusion. You're going to be down. You're going to be depressed for a season as you kind of.
But that's a difference. There's a
Exactly.
difference between grieving and like depression, as we are growing as society, is a disease.
Right. It's a
basically
chronic condition.
like you basically get depressurized from life.
Right.
You are weak. You're not hungry. You're not thirsty. You're not sleeping well, but you're sleepy all the time. You cannot produce, plus the sadness and everything else. So just not to cut you, but like, as you said, definitions matter.
For sure.
Depression is something that can kill you if Yahuah doesn't deliver you from it.
For sure. And that's my point. It's like there's like, you feel depressed and there's being depressed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like if you look at your life and you have a good family, you was providing for you, you have a kehillah, but you still feel depressed. It's like, okay, there's something wrong here that goes beyond like, oh, I lost my job and now I'm depressed
Yeah.
until I find a new one. You know what I mean? So there's a difference there. And and they get treated, one just gets healed with time. You know what I mean? Until the situation changes, things get better, your mood gets better and your mental state, I guess you would say, gets better. The other, it's like, no, there's a fundamental issue or a chain in your life or something that you haven't solved or overcome that is keeping you in that consistent state of being depressed, being lonely, and forcing isolation upon yourself. And I guess what I was going to ask you is, if in a lot of those situations, would you say that there's things that you're doing as an individual that are keeping you in that place? Like there's always going to be an external factor, right? There's always going to be things out of your control. But if you think back to when you were facing those things of loneliness and depression, were there things in your life that you did have control over that you were doing that were also feeding um, into that state of being?
Yes. Talking for myself, I cannot generalize it to everybody, but talking about myself, once I entered into this deep dark hole that is depression, that nothing satisfies you, you start like losing the taste for what you used to like before. For instance, I used to like to game with my friends, and it was everything. In talking about gaming, everything is challenging. You are competing against people, with people and stuff like that. So it is expected to have highs and lows. And I'm giving this example because like it's very silly, but to paint a picture of how messed up does your head gets once you are in that state, in that mental state. After I started like being deep, but like deep in depression, away from everybody, like just interacting with people online, I started losing the things that I used to like before. And the human um, dopamine receptors, they try to look for things that are going to replace what you don't feel pleasure out of anymore. And then
Right.
it started with like pornography. Then it started with hatred, because hatred feels good. It doesn't feel bad when you are like in deep in hatred. You cannot even see yourself hating. You're just like never satisfied with nothing. You always have a bad commentary to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You are consistently in that state of sadness and anger all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
when you are like raging at somebody online, that feels amazing. You feel like
Mm-hmm.
energized. You feel like you're ready for battle or something like that. But once that ends and you go back to your little shell and your deep dark hole, you start to think, man, I was so angry at that person for no reason. I don't even know him. I don't even know her. And feeding into those habits was like this necessity of being alone all the time, looking for pleasure all the time, because the hole gets so big, like this void in your chest. If it literally hurts, the what I had, like the deep depression that I was in, it literally hurts. The sadness is so hard. Like, have you lost a loved one before?
No, I've never lost anyone that I'm close to. I've lost loved ones, but not people, family members. I've just not had a relationship with them though. But no, you know,
So, like, I
I
lost my
haven't faced that
father.
challenge yet. Yeah.
I lost my father. It was like close to me, and he was a friend of mine. Not my best friend, because I became his friend in his final years when after I grew up as an adult, as a man. But I lost my father. The deep depression, losing my father is like a walk in the park near the sadness that depression brings,
Right.
because it is an insatiable sadness.
Right.
Your habits that you try to go after in order to have more pleasure basically feed your depression like dry logs into a fireplace.
Right.
It's basically a vicious cycle. You are alone, then you go to pornography to feel some type of love,
Right.
and then it ends, and then you feel more alone because you're missing the porn actress that you were watching before. And then
Right.
you try to go even deeper and even deeper and even deeper, and out of a sudden you are going away from your family that lives next door in the next room. So bad habits, basically striving to be alone all the time.
Right.
Once you are in that state, your body or whatever it is, like your instincts, they try to drive you even farther from people because you feel embarrassed
Right.
that you are that sad. So feeling alone, looking for instant pleasure, instant gratification methods, trying to, instead of solving the problem head on, or looking for help, not only psychologically but mainly spiritually, recognizing that you have a problem, and you have only one way out, and that is Yahusha. He said, everybody that is brokenhearted, let them come to me, like in Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all of you that are tired and heavy
Heavy
laden,
laden.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I'll give you rest and stuff like that. And also
That's for
like
your souls. I
Psalm
think that's the
34,
key.
Yahuah is with the brokenhearted. So like, what I'm trying to say is that you ask me for bad habits. Everything that forces you to be alone is a bad habit in that scenario,
Right.
because the only way out is getting away from that. But
Right.
your bad habits are trying to push you even further deep into that hole.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because it's probably a lot of the stuff that, like you said, the instant gratification. It's like a lot of those things are really replacing the remedy, right?
Right.
Like the first thing I thought of when you mentioned pornography, it's like what that's doing is replacing a wife, right,
Yeah.
or replacing someone that you can have that intimate connection with. That in a lot of ways can be a remedy for the isolation you feel, because it's the same reason that Yahuah uh, created Eve from the side of Adam, because he looked at it and he said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I shall make him a helpmate.
Right.
Help me." So, okay, so you're in that situation. So for you, then, what did you like? Did it come a point where you started to recognize the cycle, and if so, what did you do to break out of that, or if it was something different? Like, what was there like an aha moment, an epiphany? Do you who reveal something to you? Like, what did that look like? You starting to dig yourself out of that and break that cycle of I guess you could say like self-inflicted mental abuse in a lot of ways.
Right. I never not knew I wasn't that stuff. I
Hmm.
knew what was happening, and I
Right,
knew that was putting myself even deeper in the hole. But in my case, it got to a point that I just wanted to shove me as deep as I could in the
right,
grave. That is, I was literally trying to sabotage myself because I just wanted it to end. It was just easier to end rather than to face it.
right,
So, um, in my case, it didn't have anything to do with me.
right.
I started going crazy because of that. As I said in my testimony, the fear of hell and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I started looking for answers, and being healed from depression was basically good consequence, a good consequence of what happened, because then I understood that depression was like a bad thing that was another lie from the enemy, because Yahuwah said, I am the friend that sticks closer than a brother. So I was technically never alone,
Right.
but I believed in that lie for all those years, thinking that I was completely isolated and alone from everybody. So
Hmm.
in my case, I don't consider, some people might consider that like I went after and I sought Yahuwah and whatever, but I don't think I had anything to do with the process of digging myself up.
Right.
I think I was literally rescued. I was like drowning, and he literally
Right.
put me from he pulled me, from my collar and dragged me up back,
Right.
because alone, if I had not been saved like in 2020, probably I would have killed myself by then, well, by
Right.
now.
Right. Right.
Because like, as I said, I didn't think I would go past 25. When I was like 18, I was already saying I don't think I'm going to be past 25, because it was already too hard, it was already hurting too much. And once somebody says like, oh, it hurts, depression is difficult, it is hard and stuff like that, don't like dismiss this so easily. It is not because a person is functional that is not deeply difficult inside.
Right.
I
Of
was
course.
functional. I worked two jobs for a little bit of time, highly depressed, trying to, numb myself with life so I wouldn't feel that. Because once you are alone, that's like torture, where you don't have nobody around, because you keep like recycling the thoughts all the time. And
Hmm.
this is why I give Hodu to Yahuwah, and I all praises and glory to Him. This is why I'm highly resilient today. But again, it had nothing to do with me. It's just that he gave me strength enough to do that, but I had to seek for him. I had to, I wouldn't say that I had to leave my comfort zone because I didn't have any comfort zone at that point. I was just
Right.
like, going. I was just, walking through life without any expectations, without any dreams. So basically, life didn't have any taste for me. It didn't taste like nothing. So I was just trying to literally like, maybe, hopefully, this will end tomorrow, and I'm just gonna meet my fate, and that's about it. But in terms of what I did that could have helped is that once I realized that, oh, I can be healed of that stuff, okay, so I'll try it. So I think I did the right thing in terms of like not giving up once I knew there was a way out.
Right.
And I believe that, again, that has to do with Yahuah, that he basically instilled some hope in me that I didn't have anymore.
Mm. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying, it was you didn't consciously make any decisions, but but I guess what you could say is that you did consciously accept Yahusha.
Yes, I
You
think
know,
that was my only right move, so to speak.
right. And a byproduct of that was the deliverance that came with that.
Right.
Yeah. And I think like that's a very like people may see that as like a cop out kind of line, like, oh, just accept Yahusha and all your problems will be solved. And not necessarily that all your problems will be solved. I don't think that's accurate, but you will be, because I think there's some things Yahusha solves for you. Like you said, in this situation, he kind of just yanks you out of it. He's like, all right, this thing, he needs like the override. You know what I mean? The refs got to step in and just yank you out of the match.
Right.
But I think some things he guides you through those things. You know what I'm saying? It's like some things you got to like put the work in a lot of ways. And for everybody, that's different. Some people, it may be, I don't even know. I can't think of anything right. But you get the point I'm trying to make. The essence being like there's times where Yahusha will just pull you out of a situation, remove you from it completely, and that's his deliverance. Or it may be something where it's like he's gonna walk with you step by step, just like to the verse you were alluding to, that
But like
he's close to you than a brother.
he needs to. I mean, ultimately, the choice is still yours.
Right.
Like, if he wants to save you, he can save you.
Right.
But there are two possibilities. Either he's going to do it himself,
Right.
or he's gonna make you like, okay, but is there a way to fix this?
Right.
In my case, it was a byproduct. I didn't look for the way out. I just wanted it to end.
Right.
And I remember doing research. If I kill myself, do I go to hell? I remember doing that research because, like, if there wasn't a problem, I mean, what am I waiting for?
Right.
It's just easier. But like, to your point, yes, I think you need to put your work in, but it depends how Yahuah wants you to do that.
Right.
In my case, was like, okay, there is a way out. So how do I do it? My work, if I did anything correctly, is just like keep seeking. And now that I have a solution, I cannot give up now because I was saved. So now I need to understand a little bit more about this. And then, but again, it was a byproduct of trying not to go to hell. I was not trying to heal depression. On the contrary, I was trying to understand if stopping this now would affect my going to heaven. That was my concern. So depression, it gets to a point, it depends from person to person, but it gets to a point that you get so numb of reality, so void of love and purpose, that you just honestly generally don't care. Okay, what do I need to do now? Can I die like tonight? This is what you think. And now, praise Yahuah, I've been delivered completely out of this.
Well, I think that's the kind of the key too, and it's like, because you kind of alluded to it earlier, and you just kind of said it now. It's like, what do I need to do now? And it's like that idea of yielding to the Ruach, yielding to Yahuah, because if you look at your walk right from the very beginning, there was things that you knew you had to do, just by nature of following Yahusha. You had to let go of certain things. So even though you weren't consciously, like, you didn't consciously think like, okay, I see a cycle here happening, I need to do this so I can break the cycle and get out of it, just by obeying Yahusha. Those are the things that, whether you're conscious of it or not, or aware of it or not, those are the things that bring deliverance, because it's going to break you out of that cycle. So if you struggle with loneliness, obey Yahusha. Because why? Because Yahusha is going to appoint you to present yourself to the assembly a certain amount of times a month. If he puts you in an assembly that he has planted you in, maybe that assembly has extracurricular activities. We have a prayer meeting every Wednesday. We have a fellowship meeting every Friday. We have a Monday night class. I'm talking about Yadi, for example.
Right.
We have the Shabbat. Sometimes we meet on a Sunday for a men's meeting, sometimes for a women's meeting. Who's going to plant you in the place that even if you're not consciously aware of how the healing is happening, the healing will happen.
Yeah.
And the more you yield yourself to that, to his calling, to his plan, and obviously to the things that he's calling you to do, right? Go to this ministry. Oh, but it's, it's on the other side of the state. It's on the other side of the country.
Then
Go to
ask
this
him.
ministry. Exactly. It's like, just go there. There's a reason I'm planting you there, because healing is going to be found there.
Right. And the same thing happens with marriage.
Right.
To a certain extent, I understood the difference between being alone and being lonely and feeling loneliness came from, like, I started understanding this once Yahuah gave me a wife. Then I understood the healthy type of being away for a little bit.
Right.
But then and only then. And if I had never gotten into the congregation, as you were alluding to before, that would have never happened.
Right. 100%. And I agree. Yeah. So I think, I guess, to summarize or kind of give a little brief overview of what we kind of shared, I think the biggest thing is, if you're struggling with loneliness, if you're facing those things, one, it's not of Yahusha, right? And it's not of Yahuah.
Yeah.
Loneliness in and of itself, that depressive state, the depressive thing, is not of Yahusha. It's of the enemy, right? And how does the enemy attack? And a lot of the ways that you describe, with a lot of vices,
right?
Negative habits, negative traits, hanging around the wrong people to keep you in that state, in that place, and in that state of mind. So how do you work your way out? Well, by following Yahusha. What does Yahusha do? He's gonna pull you out kicking and screaming, or you're gonna willingly succumb to his command.
Right.
I need you to join this congregation. This is where I want to plant you. This is where you're gonna grow. This is where you're gonna take root, and it's only gonna benefit you. You need to drop the pornography. You need to stop hanging around these people who, all they're doing is making you drink. Every time you're feeling sad, what do? They put a beer in your hand. They put a shot of tequila in your hand. So by nature, and sometimes it's baby steps, right? It may not be a drastic change that happens overnight, but it may be slowly over time. First, he's going to get you to the congregation. Because you're in the congregation, you're going to be around people who are in pursuit of the same goals, right? To be the best disciple they can be. And by nature, you're going to spend more time with them and start dropping those negative influences. Because you're in this congregation, he's going to give you a wife. It's going to help you with dropping the pornography addiction, so on and so forth. So as corny as it may sound, or as cop-outy as it may sound, it's like, following Yahusha is going to deliver you from everything, providing you yield. Right. And even if you don't understand how yielding, or what he's telling you to take this step, and you don't understand how this step is going to be of a benefit to you, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you're relying on the wisdom of Yahuah, which far supersedes the wisdom of any man.
And the key is that you need to want it.
Right.
And I say this not because Yahuah not because he cannot do. He can do everything. He can vaporize me in a snap of a finger if he wants. Please don't do it, Father. But he can't do it. The point is that he will not force you to do anything. He gave you something called free will, and that's very powerful. And he gave it, and he cannot. He can ungive it, but he's not like that. That's not his characteristic. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And his word does not come back void. In other words, he's not gonna repent of what something he says, because he's not a man that needs to repent. Neither is he a son of man. And he's not a man to lie, or even a son of man to repent. So my point is that you need to want. If, like, let's say you are depressed and you're okay with it, you're not going to get rid of it, because until you start disliking the demons that are trying to mess with you, they are going to keep you company forever if you allow it. But as it was in my case, not that I was looking for it, but once Yahuah showed me that there was something wrong with me, I had the choice of, like, oh, okay, can I be healed of this? Yes, you can. This is how you do it. All right, I think I'll try it. I'll try it, I guess. And again, if it was written in Scripture that I could take my life and go to heaven, I wouldn't be here now.
Right.
Possibly I wouldn't be here now. And I couldn't care less about my mom, my dad. I didn't care. I honestly got to the point of not caring about other people. I lost not only hope, but I had lost love too. Like, I didn't love anybody because I didn't love myself. So that can be, and this is why I reiterate, and maybe you disagree, and that's okay. We are just, having a conversation. But I highly disagree that you can solve your internal issues specifically outside of the congregation, especially once Yahuah, as you said before, He will plant you in the place that you will grow. That's going to be good for you. Not necessarily what you want it to be, but it's going to be the most effective in the healing of the things that you are going through. And this is why I have a very tough time understanding. And this is why I counsel people the way I do counsel people. If you are struggling through something, it's way easier to go through this with us because we can go through this together
Yeah.
rather than you isolate in your room and be thinking about it instead of being on the Shabbat service with people watching you and with people seeing you and listening to. If you cry in the middle of the service, there are going to be people there to hug you. if you
Right.
if
Right.
you are in your room, there's not going to be anybody there. Oh, but I'm married. Yes, but you are not okay. Your husband is. So technically he has to be in the service with everybody else.
Right.
So how you are, or in your room you are now, completely alone, plus the feelings. How make that make sense to me?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
No. Exactly. And I guess I should clarify. Like, I don't. It's not that I think that being alone isolation solves your issues. To me, I guess maybe I did a poor job of explaining it. Is to me what I think. I think isolation is beneficial at times because sometimes I think you need the isolation of silence to hear from Yahuwah. It's the same reason Moshe encountered the bush by himself. It's the same reason Moshe had to isolate himself and climb the mountain by himself to receive the revelation. And I think there is times where isolation can be beneficial, but just like with anything, there's a balance. So and it depends highly on the individual, and like in a lot of cases, like, you need to be honest with yourself and understand, am I isolating myself because maybe I just have a preference of being with myself, being with my thoughts, whatever. Or are you isolating yourself because you're in that loop or in that cycle of self-destruction? And at the end of the day, only the individual truly knows that. And I think where the
Right.
problem lies, a lot of people lie to themselves. They say, no, I just prefer this, but you're really destroying yourself. Or
Right.
you're participating in that pattern of self-destruction.
Or you're looking for the easy way out.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think too, also the distinction of that I was saying too was there's a difference between loneliness and being alone,
Yes.
which is like some people, and that's more or less what I meant was that, like, for me, for example, I'm not a super social person. I do like my alone time maybe more than other people. And naturally, I'm not going to be like super outgoing and wanting to, like, go to every party or this or that or the other. And I think that's okay. And I could be wrong, maybe, because it depends. Like, maybe I have it in a good balance, but maybe I'm misguided and I'm doing more than I should. But again, that just comes back to, by what standard are you measuring yourself against? Because
Right.
if it's like, hey, I like my alone time and I like being alone, and because of that, I'm not going to Shabbat services, I'm not going to Chodesh, I'm not going to any congregational meetings, like, clearly that's a problem. But if someone's still attending all those meetings, they're responsible, if they're needed, they're going to present themselves, then I think that's a good indicator that you have a healthy balance.
Right.
But no, I would definitely agree. I do not think that isolation solves the problems you have. I think the scripture is very clear. You need the kehillah, you need the group. We're a group species. We need the group to survive, and not just survive physically, but also spiritually. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason Yahuwah came to regather the sheep, not to separate them. And when you look at scripture, when separation comes, usually the problems are right behind it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's very obvious why one of Yahusha's major missions was to regather his sheep and to unite them under him, because
Scattering the messed up thing.
exactly. So yeah, scattering and isolation is a terrible thing, and you take and you can look at an example of that as like Lot, right? From when Abraham, what did he do? He isolated himself. He left the congregation and he wanted to go dwell in Sodom and Gomorrah.
For what?
And
Possessions.
exactly, for possession. So what is the reason that you're isolating yourself or that you're separating yourself? That's what it always comes down to. Are you isolating, separating because, hey, I need a few days to just meditate on the word. I feel like he was trying to show me something and I want to hear his voice and seek him. So I'm going to fast and pray and studying the scripture, sure. But if you're like, I'm going to go move to a different city, not because Yahuah has called me there, I'm going to move to a different city, away from the congregation, away from my spiritual leaders, not because I'm called to be there, but because there's a better job offer over there. And I'm going to
Just because I'm sick
separate
of all
myself.
y'all.
Right. Or I'm sick of you guys, or I'm annoyed. It's like, no, Yahuah's not going to bless that. Like, if anything, you're going to reap what you sow over there, and it's probably not going to be anything conducive to your growth.
Right.
Because you're separating yourself from the congregation. And how does a flower that's not planted grow? If you're just, like I've said before, it's like a tumbleweed. You're just tumbling from city to city, town to town, after whatever new job offer there is, whatever new woman's over there, whatever, whatever it is. So, of course, and I think, all in all, I think it's the congregation, besides the salvation and faith in and on Yahusha, the congregation is probably in the top. It's like in the GOAT conversation. What is the most important things? Planting yourself in the congregation, because that in and of itself solves an immense amount of problems. And the more you dedicate yourself to the congregation, to put your services there, or just to make yourself present when it's called to be so, the more you're going to bring balance in your life, and the more stability you're going to have.
Right.
So you can't stress enough how important the group is. And how important is it? Is that it's one of the punishments for breaking certain commandments. How many times have you not seen the Torah that one of the punishments is to be cut off? You shall be kicked out of the gates.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Why? Because that's a punishment. Because it's important to be with the camp. It's important to be in the congregation.
Yeah.
And if you
and go ahead, finish.
No, go ahead.
For instance, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, what is the penalty that Yahuah establishes for the Corinthian congregation for fornication or sexual immorality? God has that side of there.
Right.
So, like, punishment should be something to avoid.
Right.
But as Nehemiah said, like, it's important, let's say, and, we see that for people like Yahusha himself, like, he isolated a little bit because he had a purpose to do, something to say that I don't think we'll ever understand fully why that was, but that happened. And the thing is that, in my opinion, to the best of my abilities, to the best of my understanding, I believe that there is this path that sometimes you will have to go through in order to, like, fasting and prayer, because Yahuah is trying to show you something. But once that's done, get your ass back.
Right.
Because it's very dangerous to be out there. And I'm not talking about, the sheep, not everybody, from the least to the greatest of the kingdom, because, like, the apostles were the apostles. They still are the apostles, but they need the camp as much as we do. And right. I speak from a leadership position, but, in Yahusha's perspective, I'm still a sheep, so I need to be in the pasture.
Of course. Well, it's like, so then the question becomes, well, where's the line? Well, just like, and it's like, one, because you don't want to isolate you so much that you abandon your post, right? Like, Yahusha gave you a responsibility, and it's like, because of that, people are going to depend on you to present yourself and stand on guard, be at your post. Yep. But just like any job, you get PTO, you get paid time off, you get some vacation time. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, go ahead, but you don't want to get to the point where now you're away without leave, and you've gone AWOL.
Me and my wife, we married, and we knew each other. We met each other online. She was in the state of São Paulo, and I was in the state of Santa Catarina, as I said, in the south. But when my father passed away, her mom got in touch with me, and 2 years prior to our wedding and stuff, for our marriage, and we became friends and stuff. And so when we got married online, because I didn't want to wait, she didn't want to wait. There was no reason for waiting, and so we never had a party. We never had, like, a reception. I think this is what you guys call it in the United States. We never had a reception. So we are planning to, and we never got to do the civil marriage yet, because we never had, the funds saved up enough to go there. And I'm gonna be 2 years married in 2020. I didn't think 20. I think 18 days, 17 days. I'm gonna be 2 years married. And I didn't even have a honeymoon. So, like, me and my wife, we are planning on going on a trip in her birthday in April, Yahuah willing. But I'm a pastor now. So how do I reconcile this? I'm 5 days and I'm back at work because the people need me here. So, like, as Nehemiah was saying, like, and being in the 5 offices or not, you have a post to occupy. If you are cleaning the tables, if you're helping with the technology, if you are like making the coffee, teaching the children, leading worship, you have a function in the kingdom. Not only Yahuah has the 5 offices as leadership position, but what about everything else? The logistics, the help, the helping hands, the Aaron and the Hurs that are there to help Moses in his mission and his guidance and stuff like
Right.
that. So everybody is important in the congregation, and everybody is expected to do something, to serve. You want to be the greatest in the kingdom? Be the greatest servant of them all. So, but we are all human. We are all in this human body, so we need rest. We need a vacation from time to time. Of course, I don't know if I'm going to be taking vacations every year or every 2 months, but at some point I'll have to go to travel a little bit. And I'm not isolating myself. I'm just
Yeah.
getting rest for a few days and stuff like that. So
You're
I think,
rejuvenating. There's
yeah,
a
I'm
difference.
rejuvenating. I'm refreshing, resetting to the next battle. So there's a difference. And
Of
I
course.
think the goal that everybody needs to try and acquire is balance, but like true balance, that I can do this without harming my walk, without harming people around me, without harming myself, in terms of isolation, and uh, procure isolation rather than loneliness, because loneliness normally is not a good thing.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, it's like as a plant grows, you got to repot it. And there's a certain amount of time you can pull that plant out of the small pot while it transitions to the bigger pot. But it's like you can't leave the plant. You can't just not pot it. You can't take it out of its old pot and just leave it on concrete and think like it's gonna be fine. Like the plant's gonna die. It's never gonna flower. It's never gonna bud. But there is an appropriate amount of time, and I think that varies, person to person, and that's where being in the Kehillah is important, because if you are gone for too long, it's like then you're gonna have people like, yo, I haven't seen Nehemiah in like five weeks. Where's this guy been at? And it's like someone starts calling you up, like, I do need to show up. So that's why, Proverbs, and how does it go? Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude there is safety. It's like 11, 14, something like that.
In the multitude of counselors, there's safety.
Right. So it's like, if that's true, then that means the opposite is also true, which is in isolation, there is no safety.
Yes, there's danger.
In prolonged isolation, unnecessary isolation, and too much isolation, there's danger.
Yep.
So with that being said, here's another thing I want to ask you before we wrap up. So what do you think? Because I think I'd like to hear your perspective, since we're the same generation,
right?
And we've kind of grown up in this,
world,
technological age. Which, bro, the other day I was on Twitter and I saw, now, the company, Razer, the game, like they make the mouses and the headsets.
Yeah, I got a keyboard from them.
Shout out Razer, sponsor me.
Me too.
They I was like on Twitter or X or whatever, and I was scrolling. They have this, like the CES or like one of those big technology like conferences where they like people unveil, new tech. They have like a little, with this whole AI stuff. They have like a little like hologram projection thing. It's like the size of like the Yeti mic. And bro, you can like have like a little AI assistant, and you can make it like a little anime character.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it talks to you. And
I see where this is going, and it is not healthy.
It's getting weird. You know what I mean? It's getting real weird.
Right.
Anyways, but being that we grew up in this generation that's very unique, because we're like the only generation that grew up with technology. Everybody kind of before, they were around before like immense technology, and they kind of like got to see it kind of come in. But when we were born, and like by the time we could like be conscious, you know what I mean? It's like it's already been there.
Right.
So do you think, because look, obviously, like, okay, I'll put it like this, right? The ideal is that everybody's in a Kehillah physically.
Right.
But is it bad that because obviously, look, like even the mission we're in, Yadi, we have a Zoom meeting every Friday. There's a ton of people who are by themselves, in the sense that they have company because they have the Zoom meetings and the Shabbat services that are streamed, but physically they don't have a community that they can like get up and go to every Shabbat or this or that. Do you think that there's situations where that's okay, or do you think like they should be doing whatever they can to be part of a community physically?
My opinion may not be the most popular one in this subject. Um, I had one perspective before joining a real congregation, and now I
Mm-hmm.
have than I have now. Before I joined the real congregation, when I say real, not that Yati virtual is not real. I'm talking about in person congregation,
Physical, yeah.
yeah, physical. Well, before I joined the physical congregation, I had the perspective that yes, the virtual is okay, and and I thought it was okay for some people to never make the transition. But ever since I joined a physical congregation, I kind of have a different perspective in that sense. Because yes, everybody has their difficulties and everybody has reasons not to relocate or not to do all they can in order to be in a congregation, and but at the end of the day those are all excuses.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of how hard they are and how much they affect your decision, they are all excuses. Because if you really want to do it, you will do it. The
Mm-hmm.
question then becomes where. So, for instance, in Yati, we have the Goshen group, we have the Miami group, we have the New York, and I think is in Queens group, or in Jamaica. I'm not sure. Then we have here in Brazil another group. So we kind of have a few options for you to choose. And notice that I didn't mention anything about money, because money is not a factor in your decision making according to scripture. It is
Right.
according to everybody else, but according to scripture, Yahuah has never factored in money before he told somebody to do something.
Right.
Why? Because he's the owner of gold and silver. He's the owner of what we call costly stones or gems, or the minerals that we transform into
Yeah.
coins. So he doesn't care about that necessarily. So with that being said, I don't think anybody should settle for the virtual,
Mm-hmm.
because if I said this, I would be debunking everything that I said myself a
Right.
few
Right.
minutes ago of the importance of the congregation. I don't think there is a valuable excuse for you
Yeah.
not to relocate. Of
Right.
course, stay. The virtual has its place, but for people that are like, I don't know, bedridden or something like that,
Right.
that's almost impossible. But with
Right.
Yahweh, everything is possible. So even that goes down the drain. But like, it was the virtual was an option for me for a season. And once
Right.
it got time for me to join a physical congregation, I had the choice.
Yeah.
And I chose according to what I see written in scripture. Psalm 133, how behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. So I said, okay, I think scripture is being as clear as it can be to me. So to answer your question in a short answer, I don't think there is a reason good enough not to strive to be in a physical congregation.
Yeah.
And I don't think if you can't do it now, you'll never be able to. I think once that opportunity comes, you just need to be brave enough to take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree. I think there's definitely obviously situations where it's unfeasible. Like you said, probably you're bedridden. If you're someone who's older in age and you're unfortunately getting to that point in your life where you're not very mobile and you really physically can't go somewhere. Or maybe like you're a woman married to an unbeliever. Maybe you got saved and your husband's not willing to relocate and you have to stay with your husband. But I think even in those situations, like for example, like you have Yadi, right? And you have the headquarters in Goshen. And we have people here, but let's say you find Yadi and you start attending virtually the Zoom meetings, the fellowship, you watch the Shabbats on YouTube or whatever. And for one reason or another, it's like you just cannot move to Goshen B'Tzafon. And maybe you're not even in Miami where you could even go to Miami, or you're not in New York where you could go to the Queens. There's not one. Well, then maybe you can host a home group in
Yes.
your own home, and maybe you can't go to the congregation, but maybe it doesn't mean necessarily you're a pastor, but maybe you're the host of like, hey, let me get 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are in my area and like let's watch the service together and we can do our worship here and
Yes.
so on and so forth. Because I think like in my opinion, I think I don't say long gone, but I think for the most part gone are the days where you have congregations that are like 500, 600, 700 people.
Not in our faith anyway.
not in our faith for sure. But even if there was, I think one, it's not very manageable. Like it starts to become a lot. So you kind of have to. And I was actually about this last Shabbat, and because I was curious about it, and I was like, I think what he says essentially either like you kind of have to start breaking things up, because no way can one pastor, you can't pastor 1,000 people. Like how do you possibly have a relationship where you can dedicate time, a sufficient amount of time to that many
You
people?
need elders.
Exactly. So the idea being, I think, especially as we move on to this digital age, I think what you'll see is, you may have like the head of a ministry, and you kind of have these um, um, cell groups. You know what I'm saying? Like there's people who are meeting and fellowshipping together. They may not be at the headquarters, but they're associated with this ministry. They have the spiritual leader.
That's the apostolic succession,
Right.
and this is how it happens. Like what did
Right.
Shulach do in all his letters? He was
Right.
planting groups all over the place.
Exactly.
This is another unpopular opinion that I have. I don't want to have 50 people here
Yeah.
because Yahusha had 12. Technically, we are a small remnant. And
Right.
with three elders, let's say I have three elders. How are we supposed to take care of everybody like in a good way with 50 people?
Right.
And I know, and if I'm wrong, okay, I will be corrected. But this is what I see in Scripture. The groups are generally small,
Right.
because either we are trying to acquire good soldiers of quality, or we are trying to attract people. And I'm saying this as a pastor.
Right.
Having 50 people would benefit me in a myriad of ways.
Right.
Can you imagine like making 12,000 a month out of tithes?
Right.
That's a real possibility with 50 people.
Right. Right.
So like this would be in my best interest to say otherwise, but I guess that the way that the kingdom works is that once something starts being too big, we replicate.
Right.
So like it's a big group, 35, 40, two groups of 15.
Right.
And then 35, 40, another two groups of 15. So
Right.
this is the way I believe we were programmed to work
Right.
in, I guess.
Well, you saw that pattern too in the times of ancient Israel, where you had the 12 tribes in the land together. Like
Small
what
pocket.
what did they do during the Pesach? Was there one lamb that everybody ate out of? No, it went by home, by essentially like your vicinity. Like maybe it's 2, 3, 4 tents that are in the same, cul-de-sac or in the same street, and like those people get together. And I think that's kind of what the vision, especially now as we get into a digital age, or we're in the digital age, and as with social media, YouTube, all these things, I think like what you're seeing, especially with Yadi, is kind of that. Like you have Shaliach, he has the physical congregation here, which is where his headquarters is, and he has 10 people or so, but he has all these like mini congregations that are all still under that umbrella, but
Right.
they're not all physically here at this place, but they all do meet virtually, but there's still a resemblance. There's still a group that meets in person.
And there is accountability between all of them.
Exactly. And so I think either way, like even if you can't go be part of like the main congregation, the main headquarters, if you will, it's like you can still, even if you can't move there because you live like, if you live in Ireland and you're part of Shale's ministry, you're under that umbrella, that covering, the likelihood of you being able to get to the United States and get to Florida is very low, because one, you got to become a resident. There's all these legal hurdles and a lot of physical roadblocks to prevent that. So it's like, okay, so then let's find 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 families, and let's gather those people together. And you guys meet every Shabbat, and you guys hold each other accountable. And maybe one of you is raised up to be an elder, a pastor. And I think that you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and maybe you're the first one that is going to mushroom into small pockets all over the country.
Right.
Especially in a small place like the British Isles, that the countries are very small in area and stuff.
Yeah.
So something can blow up very fast.
Right.
And just to clarify, I said I don't want 50 people here, not because I don't want it. It's because this is just not the pattern that I see in Scripture. And I might be wrong, and if I am, please Yahuah correct me. But even our Shaliach, he had like, I guess he had like 80 to 90 people in Miami. And what did happen? First of all, a lot of people left.
Right.
Once Yahuah started revealing stuff, a lot of people felt too offended. That was too scriptural, and they left. That's number one. And then number two, it spread into 2 groups. So like now we have 2 groups there, and then we also have a group in Port Charlotte with Elder Mordechai.
Right.
I think it's Florida. I don't know the state.
Yeah, Florida.
So I think that's the way Yahuah works, and I believe that's the best way to go, because if you are too much, you start losing the quality.
Yeah, yeah.
And since when Yahuah is concerned with quality, he basically said, "I you only a remnant shall be saved." So like
Right,
we are a remnant people. We are technically smaller than everybody think we should be.
right, right. I agree. Yeah, it's just interesting to think about what things will look like in the next 20, 30 years as
Yeah.
technology keeps progressing, and what are the, because like I said, I think the days of like these big mega churches, and there's still some left, but those things are, I think, starting to slow down and die. And these big mega churches and these big, congregations full of hundreds of, sometimes even thousands of people are diminishing. And I think that's what you start to see is just that pattern of small groups, and a lot of them are kind of like in a house. You know what I'm saying? And like take Abraham for example. You had Abraham, who was the head honcho at that time. He was in
Right.
charge. He had his wife, and he had Lot had his family, and whatever other people he had working for him, whatever servants he had, they all had their families, and maybe they all did meet together on a certain day. But maybe, I mean, not the best example because Lot's situation didn't go too well. But essentially, Lot probably kept the Shabbat. I mean, if Lot was completely disobedient to the highest degree and was murdering people, I doubt Yahuwah would have spared his life. So there had to be some degree of obedience in there. Obviously, he was making a lot of big mistakes, but of all the people, Yahuwah still preserved him. And I'm sure a lot of that had to do with Abraham's guidance and intercession also on his behalf, being like, yo, if there's 50, 30, 40, 20, one. So I'm sure that had a big role to it too, but it's not, Yahuwah's not going to save a person who's just a complete piece of garbage and is worshiping other idols and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting. And I think, what we're seeing is kind of what we're seeing now, which is this hybrid, right? Because like, take you and me, for example, I'm in Goshen, which is where Shaliak is physically. You're in Brazil. We're still under the same umbrella, and we still do see each other virtually.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you still have the physical congregation. You still have Campina. You know what I mean?
At this point, I don't think we can isolate neither of the places, because as you said, like, okay, we have the physical groups here, but we need to connect somehow.
Right.
We are thousands of miles away from each other. So I agree. I think we are going to end up virtually. I think we not virtually. I think we are going to end up like hybridizing even more than it is today.
Right.
Not replacing the physical assembly, but like connecting a lot of physical assemblies through virtual.
Right. Yeah, I agree. All right, man. Well, that was fun. That was awesome. I think
that was a nice one.
I think it was a good convo, and I'm excited. Episode 30, man.
30.
Mr. Beast, where you at, dude? I don't even know that guy. Mr. Beast too? You know what I mean?
I mean, he should be sponsoring this stuff.
He should be.
Where's my money at, man?
That's what I'm saying. All right, man. Well, thanks for hanging out, and love you.
Love you too.
And thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe.
Shalom,
love you guys too. Shalom, shalom.
Bye-bye.